Appreciate a chance to be with all of you this evening. I hope I can share a story worthy of this event. When I was asked to do this talk and given a 15-minute limitation, it's like, what? I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to do my best. So when I thought about what to talk about and how to make use of this time, I thought, well, maybe I'll tell a bit of a story of my life and sort of how I manifested some of the things that I would like to share with you this evening. Some of the things that I think are really valuable to look at are potential of a human being and what we can accomplish with our lives, what we can make use of during the moments that we exist, that we breathe, that we have this sacred opportunity to be here. And when I was 3 years old, I started remembering an event. My father took me across the street where a neighbor had cut down some big pine trees. They're about this big around. And he showed me how to take little pieces of trees and put them underneath them and roll them along. It's like building a pyramid, because we were moving things that were 15 times the size of me at least. And when I was 3 years old, I didn't have a real big comprehension on the magnitude of that model, but it got me thinking that you can do anything. Basically, that was a real important precedent. And so my father shared that with me, and we rolled them over and built a log house in the backyard for me to play with and sort of have a vision of possibilities. My mother let me roam wild behind that little log house. We lived on the edge of a swamp and many miles of wild land. And so I would just go down in the swamp at age 3 and 4 and 5 and be gone half a day. And parents really didn't know much about where I was or what I was doing, but that freedom was really just a wonderful thing to start out with as a young person. And I believe that fostered some different vision of possibilities. It gave me some independence to believe that, yes, I could just go off and do what I wanted to do. And I started doing things like collecting turtles, oddly enough. I never heard of anybody else collecting turtles, but that was my interest, my passion. I thought, well, this is what I want to do. So I started collecting them. I trained a dog to collect turtles, and he would sniff them out and point them, And so I had 100 turtles, 100+ turtles at age 5, and so I was having a good old time. And when I was 7, I got the idea that I'd like to build a tree house. And I didn't have any materials, didn't have any money. I wasn't a big spender at age 7, so I went to a construction zone that was about a mile away, walked through the forest, and I picked up bent nails and I took them home and straightened them. Early lesson of reusing instead of throwing away. And so I went to the scrap pile and got the scraps and started building. I built a little ladder up and built a tree house. And so I built a room, and then I built another room on top of that, and another room on top of that, and then a catwalk over to another build tree, and then I built a really big room over there and sort of used up all the tree. I started building down and finally had an underground thing. It's like, well, that was fun, and it was really a lesson on what is possible, just one board at a time, one nail at a time. I just took a vision that I had. Nobody told me I couldn't do it because I didn't even tell anybody what I was doing. I just started doing it, But later in life, I started running into people telling me that I couldn't do this, that, or the other, and that's an interesting thing to deal with and bounce back from. I went to elementary school, and I would read books, biographies. In fact, I think I read almost every biography in the collection in our library. And what I was doing, without really having a consciousness of what I was doing, I was reading about interesting people and how they chose to live their life. And I digested a lot of those stories. And so I thought, well, those interesting people like Sacagawea or Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Geronimo, those people were sort of a model that I took in, that I set as a standard or bar of what was possible to do with one's life. And so as I reflect back on it years later, I realized how incredibly valuable a good model, a model of, yes, you can do these things with your life. One story I read was Sam Gribley, about a little kid that moved out into the forest and lived in a hollow log, a hollow tree, and he collected wild food. And I so liked that story, I thought, well, I'm going to do that too. And actually, I got permission to go on a camping trip, and at age 12, I just moved out into the forest for a week and hunted and gathered. I ate a little garter snake, and I ate little fish. I couldn't catch the big ones, so I just ate a whole bunch of little ones, and ate the roots for the Indian cucumber, and just learned how to live simply. And I was really afraid. I remember that first night of the darkness, just fear, and I overcame that fear, and I moved into a zone where I never have been afraid like that again. I had that experience, and so I moved through it and transformed like a passing rite. When I was 17, I moved into a teepee, American Indian teepee, and I lived in a teepee for 17 years. When I first moved out, people sort of got their attention. They said, "Oh, you can't escape reality. You can't do that." And I was like, well, okay, but I'm going to keep doing it. And so year after year, I lived devoid of television or advertising, just living in the forest like our ancestors did, closer to nature. And years later, I came back with the announcement. It's like, actually, you know, I went to reality. The natural world is what governs everything that goes on. And so I was sort of stumbled on the real deep value of the guidance of life. When I was 18, I canoed across America on the Mississippi River, and every day people told me I was crazy and I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. I just said, yeah, all right. And I canoed across and made it down to New Orleans and had a wonderful time on that 1,000-mile-plus journey. Learned a lot as an 18-year-old. When I was 19 years old, I walked across America on the Appalachian Trail, and I remember there were times where I was very hungry, and basically I didn't have any money and not much food. I went without food quite a bit, to where you could stick your hand between my ribs, you know, just ribs like a little poster child kind of thing. But I had a vision for what I wanted to accomplish, and food was not a priority. And if I saw something that was slower than me, I'd just club it on the head and eat it. I remember one porcupine, I smashed his skull, and I started skinning him, and I built a fire there in the middle of the trail and put it on a stick, and the meat was starting to cook. And I thought, my gosh, I'm not going to wait for this thing to cook. I just cut off a leg and started eating it raw, and it was pretty dang good. When I went to college, I lived in a teepee, and I would just live naturally, hunting and gathering wild food, and basically I was doing natural living and trying to put two worlds together, to where I was living in the forest and yet going into the modern world, because I wanted to get a degree so I could somehow help the world and bring a lot of the values that I'd found in the natural world to the modern world in the form of an education center that I had a vision for. And those experiences earlier in life, realizing that you can make a dream come true, made me want to do that. And so I took on college as a passing rite. But some of my better education actually over the years came from some of the experiences, not from a book, but like from kayaking across Alaska. As a college student, I took a break and I went to the southern coast, Skagway, and I put in there and kayaked down to Vancouver. Learned a lot through that whole experience. I remember I got into horses and learned a lot from horses, especially one named Hasty. He's a wonderful gelding that took me across America in 103 days. And I jumped into that story, or that journey, without really knowing that much about horses. It was a real innocent kind of thing, which really to me is one of the best stories about it, is that I didn't know how to ride a horse across America. I'd just come up with the idea about 17 years before. And one night I was sitting around a campfire and somebody said that they liked horses, and it just came out of my mouth, I'm going to ride a horse across America someday. And they're like, really? Like, yeah. And it's like, and I looked at myself like, really? And so I started telling people this vision that I was creating, and along the way people would say, well, you don't have a horse. Like, oh yeah, details, you know. I'll get a horse. And so for years, 17 years, I held on that vision, and one day I got on a horse. I got this beautiful horse, Hasty, and I started riding, and I rode across America and sort of got into the idea of seeing how fast it could be done, and sort of knocked it out in about 103 days. And some years later, I went and took a horse and got in a buggy and rode a buggy across a lot of North America, did 2,486 miles in 56 days, which people told me all along was impossible, but I had been told a lot of the things that in life were impossible before that time, and really sort of figured out on my own that most of the things people tell you are impossible really aren't. And if you set your mind to something, you can really jump into it and make it happen, even if it hurts. I remember on the Appalachian Trail one day in New York, I just had tears running down my face because of the pain in my feet. But the pain wasn't enough to overcome the value and the passion for making my dream come true of keeping on going. And that's part of the reality that you can experience when you put yourself into action. I remember when I was riding across Texas on the Long Riders journey, a journalist, I didn't know he was a journalist at the time, I was just riding down the middle of the town, and I saw through a plate glass window this man was at his computer, and he looked up and he looked out like that, and I saw him jump up and run out, and then he stood by the door, and I looked back, and he just sort of followed us along for a little bit, and eventually when we're about out of town, he ran, hey, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm riding my horse, I'm riding west. He said, but you look real. I was like, well, I am real. He said, I mean, you really look real. And I said, and I started thinking, what was he really saying? And I realized that he had seen, in fact, he said, I thought y'all were making a movie, so I didn't want to interrupt you. And it's like, and I said, well, mister, you know, this rain that's coming down makes me wet. I'm really wet, and I stink, and I'm hungry, and I don't know where my next meal is coming from. My clothes are dirty, and, you know, I'm challenged. You know, I'm hardened, and my horse is hardened. We've just ridden from the coast of Georgia, and we're going about 40 or 50 miles a day. And yeah, we are real. In fact, this is a real thing. And most of modern America, when you sit there and watch a television of an actor dressed up to do something he doesn't even really know how to do on a story that somebody else made up, you know, that's not real. And so this is real. And so basically, for me, it was a little touchstone of awareness of the fact that most of our modern American experience is watching somebody else on a television that's just sort of creating a sham or illusion oftentimes, and we need to focus more on us, taking our vision and our dream, finding out what we want to do, what's important for you, and make it come true. And if it hurts sometimes, go through the pain. And if someone tells you you can't do it, say, have a good day. And go on and make your dreams come true. And that's something that I've experienced by just going out and having life experiences that have helped me make my dreams come true. And I've done this over and over and over to the point where I believe what I'm sharing with you this evening, and I hope my short story of a piece of passion from my life might transfer to an inspiration for you to do what you believe in. That's my challenge for you, my goal for you with the vision of what I share today. Peace be with you, my friends.